The British Minister of Health, Matt Hancock, is charged with tens of thousands of COVID deaths. Premier Johnson needs him, also to distract from his own failure. If it were up to the former chief advisor to the British government, Dominic Cummings, British Health Minister Matt Hancock would have had to be fired at least 15 to 20 times. There's really no reason why he's still in office, was Cummings' damning verdict at a hearing last Wednesday. But Hancock still has his post. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who secretly married his mistress Carrie Symonds on Saturday, publicly expressed full confidence in his current most important cabinet member. Well, when Merkel did that, that means he's fired soon. But Johnson has become cautious about his health minister. After all, Hancock is responsible for one of the biggest scandals in the UK's much criticized pandemic policy. He is to blame for the fact that almost 42,000 elderly people died in old people's homes because they were infected with COVID-19. The virus was introduced into around a third of the old people's and nursing homes because the residents in hospitals had become infected and were released back into the homes without corona tests. The British government had simply not taken the issue seriously, despite many indications. Now Hancock even stands there as a liar. In March 2020, Hancock had guaranteed us that the old people would be tested for corona before they were released, when they realized in May 2020 that that was not true at all. It was a lie, Cummings accused the Minister of Health. He asked for Hancock to resign. Johnson, however, kept his health minister, as he keeps every member of his close circle of power who gets caught in the crossfire, according to the motto, the more criticism there is of his employees, the less Johnson himself is held accountable. The main thing is that the ministers are loyal to him. Meanwhile, Hancock claims he cannot answer questions. He is too busy saving lives because that is his job. No, nurses do that, not you. He evades questioning journalists and even runs away from them. In terms of power politics, the 42-year-old ambitious career politician does everything to play in the cabinet of the Conservative government, no matter how much he has to be pushed back and forth. Despite his dyslexia, Hancock studied at Oxford what almost every future British politician studies: philosophy, politics and economy. While completing a trainee program in the economics department of the Bank of England, he was discovered in 2005 by George Osborne, who later became Chancellor of the Exchequer in the government of David Cameron. Hancock joined the Conservative Party, became a West Suffolk MP in 2010, and has since served up in the governments of David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson. He was State Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the Cabinet Office, the Ministry of Culture, and finally Minister of Culture, before becoming Minister of Health in 2018. Hancock is just as versatile in his political positions. In the referendum on Brexit in 2016, he voted, as expected by then Prime Minister David Cameron, for Great Britain to remain in the EU. Under Boris Johnson, he then supported the hard Brexit policy. In contrast to numerous Conservative MPs who protested against the suspension of Parliament by Boris Johnson in 2019, he obediently sided with the head of government. The father of three looks colourless, adjusted, but perhaps that is why he is so successful at surviving changing governments. Of course, he did not receive the post of Prime Minister, although in autumn 2019 he tried to be nominated for the election of the party leader. But Hancock quickly realized that he would be defeated, gave up, and promised Johnson his allegiance. Hancock is happy to help out to look advantageous. In April 2020, he announced, much too late, the new test systems for corona infections. He promised the system would deliver 100,000 tests a day by the end of the month. As if by magic, the statistics actually spat out the number of 100,000 tests. Only later did it become apparent that the government had sent 40,000 tests to households and simply counted them regardless of whether tests had been used or not. In fact, it took the UK months to test on a large scale. This was a major factor in why the country's pandemic was systematically underestimated. The lockdowns came too late and the UK has lost 130,000 to date. The Statistical Office called the action of the embellished test numbers Potemkin regime. Former government advisor Cummings was more emphatic. Hancock's behavior was criminal, just hideous, he said. Former public prosecutor Nazir Afzal is currently investigating whether the Ministry of Health can be sued for negligent homicide. And otherwise, Hancock made many false promises. At the height of the corona pandemic in spring 2020, when hospitals in England were struggling with 3,000 new cases a day, he assured that each of these patients was receiving the best possible care. That was of course not the case, said former government advisor Cummings. In fact, at that time, ambulances had to wait up to 7 hours before their patients could be admitted to the emergency room. Conditions in the intensive care units were reminiscent of triage, without this ever being publicly confirmed. Hancock also assured that the staff in the hospitals had received sufficient protective suits, which was also not true. In Great Britain, the health minister stands for the dishonesty, hypocrisy, and the secretive felt that characterizes the style of the Johnson administration. This also applies beyond Corona. Hancock got involved in meetings with the failed financier Lex Grenzel, whose payment system was later introduced by the British Health Service, NHS. In another case, the Minister of Health recently received from Lord Gate, the Chief of Conduct hired by Johnson, a clean bill of health for concealed conflicts of interest. Hancock did not state that he had any stake in any of his sister's companies. The company, which specializes in the disposal of office documents, won an order from the Ministry of Health in Wales. Also under investigation is an order received by the Ministry of Health to the owner of a former pub in the neighborhood of Hancock, who was friend with the Minister of Health. It's about £30 million for plastic sleeves for corona tests, but the pub owner's company never produced anything like this. In spite of everything, Hancock doesn't have much to fear. The UK government is sweeping everything under the carpet, especially the bill paid by Lord Brownlow, a Conservative Party donor, of much of the renovation in Downing Street. Johnson's new wife, Carrie Symonds, had the space redesigned for more than €100,000, including wallpaper by designer Lulu Lytle. But Lord Gate recently tested the Prime Minister, tested that he did not know who was paying the bill. Regardlessly of the allegations by Cummings, there will be a parliamentary investigation into the wrong decisions in the corona management of the British government, at the latest in the coming year. It will not only be about the country's vaccination success, which Hancock repeatedly celebrates as the success of Brexit, which is complete bollocks. The allegations against Johnson are serious. At the beginning of the pandemic, he didn't care, skipped 5 sessions of the British Cobra Crisis Committee, doctored on his Churchill biography, and planned a divorce from his second wife, Marina Wheeler. He went on vacation with his new fiancée and contracted corona himself after dismissing the virus as a new type of swine flu. Cummings, who is also considered an unscrupulous powerman, is now taking revenge on Johnson after he ended his consultancy work in November of last year. The Prime Minister was unable to carry out his duties during the crisis because he kept changing his mind and not responding quickly enough to the scientific advice Cummings claims. Cummings is unlikely to let up on such accusations. Johnson needs a health minister to pin down his government's failure as a lightning rod and culprit. When the time comes, he'll fire Hancock after all. But he still has to play his role right now. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in my next video. Auf Wiedersehen.